All right. Well, welcome everybody to the inaugural first ever podcast of the Acts 539 Red Light Ministry. With me today, I have Kelly Padgett, direct from the Philippines, Cebu, Philippines, if I'm not mistaken. As you can see, it's light behind me and dark behind Kelly. That's not a camera trick or a green screen. We are literally on AM/PM swaps here. So
Yeah.
welcome, Kelly. And for anybody, I mean, surprisingly, I don't know that anybody doesn't know about Kelly Padgett, but just in case we do have a couple listeners who don't know who Kelly Padgett is, give us a little background.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you didn't. Actually, that'd be great. I don't. I don't. I used to want to be known by people. Now I'm okay not being known. But yeah. So long story short, obviously born and raised in the USA. Washington D.C. is where I was born, which is I think unusual. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm from Washington D.C. They're either from Maryland, Virginia, or Delaware, but actually from Washington D.C. And Uh, gosh, the long and the short of it is I don't go over my whole growing up or anything like that, but I've been in the Church of the Nazarene since 2007, where I've been pastoring. I was volunteer pastor and then uh, became full time in the ministry in 2010. And throughout that career in the U.S., I like every other pastor, I did every job there was to do, right? Starting with youth. Everybody starts with youth and so on and so forth. But I had a Bible college degree when I got out of high school and went to Bible college, and I felt called to the ministry then. And I ran afoul of exactly sort of what we're going to be talking about today. And so it's interesting, not to tip the hand, but we're going to be talking about transparency. But it's interesting because I went to a hyper conservative college, and I thought that being at a Christian school, I could be transparent and be myself and be safe. And in fact, I was anything but safe. And it really tore me up. And in fact, it was so bad that I left school. Uh, I was halfway through my final class and I quit school because I was so disgusted that I refused to have a degree from that school. So, I mean, I had all the money was paid, everything was done, and I just left, and then from there I ran for 17 years, and that's a whole nother story of how God chased me down, and it was amazing. But He welcomed me back, and that's when I found Salem Fields, and as sort of a hospice area and a place for recovering Christians, if you will. And that sounds bad, but if you've ever been there, you kind of understand the reference. But um, man, so doing ministry at Salem Fields was always unique and somewhat interesting. But there was a moment where I'd gone through a divorce, which is sort of unheard of in the pastoring that I grew up in, right? The Baptist church that would have been an immediate no dice, but in the Church of Nazarene, Wesleyan church, if you will, um, they were more lenient, if you will, depending on the circumstances, right? So I was able to continue through in my ordination, but I had gone through um, just a really rough time, and I was single for 8 years, and I ended up meeting somebody in the Philippines, right? So it was just such a unique thing, and she's my wife today, and she's standing right over there. But her name is Hanel, and so I made several trips back and forth to the Philippines. And make a long story short, the things that I observed while I was here. I mean, obviously, it was really fun because I was seeing her, meeting her family. You know, another foreign country. I had traveled outside the U.S. Due to missions and being a missions pastor and stuff like that. But the things that I saw, like my famous story is walking down the street and seeing these girls with bikinis and numbers on, and essentially dancing for whomever would take them home for the night or take them to a hotel for the night, and that's how they lived, right? That's how they made their money, and it just broke my heart. So I came back, said to myself, I've got to do something about this. Being an American, my first go-to was let me raise money. and God gave me different direction. So that, again, that's another long story. But um, instead of moving my wife to the U.S. like a lot of people do, I moved here, and we founded a ministry called Reach PH. And what we do is we go into bars, we create community with girls that are working in the bars, and we offer them freedom from the bar. We put them in a safe house. We help them complete their education. We help them with employment. We give them food and lodging and clothing, doctors, medical, dental, whatever they need, so that they have no pressure but to reroute their lives. And we've got a house right now, and we've got 4 people living in it, and another person on their way. We've had one story where a person escaped a really bad situation, but then decided to go back to it. And sometimes that happens, right? But so we're full-time missionaries here, and I also teach at a couple of Bible colleges and things. I'm really proud to do that. It's something that's near in my heart. But outside of that, I teach jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and to some local people here, a great group of guys and girls, and it's really a blast. And the only negative is I sweat from sun up to sundown, and then beyond that, all day, every day, I just sweat. Today, literally, I got out of the shower. I had I don't remember. We were going someplace, and I just got out of the shower. I just feel so fresh, and within 30 seconds, I'm sweating, and I'd already sweated through my shirt and my pants. I was like, man, this is crazy. Anyway, that's me, man.
So you kind of touched on something that made me think of a kind of a different question than what I was going to ask. But, when you talk transparency and what it did for you, or the lack thereof, in college, where you felt like you couldn't be honest, or at least you got, nailed over the head or crucified, so to speak, for being honest. What do you think being caught not being honest in your line of work, as you approach these young women and trying to offer them hope and freedom? I mean, man, how detrimental could that be if you weren't being completely transparent? I mean, a bait and switch would have to just be as bad as what they're going through already.
Well, I don't know if it's as bad. The reality of it is they expect that.
Right.
So it's the hardest part for us is gaining trust and building trust. We have to do it the old-fashioned way, and that's visit after visit after visit. I mean, Joe, like literally, I for a while there, I've slowed down because I'm somewhat focused on the girls that we have in the house right now and things that are happening. But I still visit. As it turns out, the jiu-jitsu school that I teach at is right next to the bars. I mean, the buildings are attached to each other. So when I go to class, I'll stop in and say hi. And then when I'm covered in sweat and all nasty, I'll come back and I'll walk in and get a glass of water or a bottle of water, and say hi to the girls and talk to them. We buy them groceries. Even the ones that don't come with us, we'll meet with them and buy them groceries, because they make on a normal day, they make $6, and that's it. And with that $6 a day, they have to support their entire family. They're not doing it for just them. They've normally got kids at home, babies. They've got parents they're taking care of. They've got, you name it. But the thing is, they expect the bait and switch. They're expecting all that, and they're totally prepared for it. In fact, they're okay with that. What they aren't expecting is somebody to tell them the truth and actually stand by it and then prove it. Like, that's shocking for them, and it's really, you can see it in their eyes. When I mean, the reality of it is, at first, when I was going there's 3 particular girls that I've gotten to know so well. I mean, them, their families, but when I first got there, like, they all listened to the story. Hanel and I took them out to lunch, and she told them the story, told them everything. And so, I'm thinking they believe it. Well, man, the next time I walked in, they were throwing everything at me but the kitchen sink. I mean, they were trying to come on to me. They were trying so hard to get me to break. Right. And this one particular girl, I mean, she tried so hard. I mean, so hard. And I just kept looking at her, and I said, you're worth more than this. You know what I mean? And she would just laugh and kind of flit away like a fairy and then come back. But eventually they stopped doing it. Right. They stopped completely. it hurts me because I walk in, I'll be, and I've gotten to know the owner and the bartender, everybody, but I'll stay at the one end of the bar and talk to the bartender, and I watch them putting on their show. Then they'll rotate over to where I am. All pretenses come down, all the fakeness, all of it goes away, and they just like, they lower their head. They're like, I'm so tired, and I'm like, hey man, I'm praying for you, got you. You know what I mean? I love you. You're not alone. And they just come to me for a rest, you know what I mean? But they quit all the nonsense
Right.
because I finally proved to them, I'm like, that's not what I'm here for, but everybody else in the world has been. So yeah, I mean, transparency is key to discipleship. And I see what I'm doing even in a bar as discipleship,
Right.
because they need to see what, not to be corny, but what would Jesus do if he were in that place? I mean, he was around the same types of people who were just, their entire subsistence was what they could do for other people, right? And that's it. I mean, trade their bodies, trade their whatever. Matthew would trade his accounting skills to please the Romans. I mean, all of it, right? Just cheats and thieves and whores. And that doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them a function of what they had to do to survive in their mind. And so what did Jesus do, right? And so that sort of transparency is the only thing that wins the day. It's the only thing. Otherwise, it's worthless.
So, we talk about being transparent with others, but how transparent do you or others in your ministry have to be with yourself too? Because I know for me personally, when you first told me this idea of what you were doing, I'm like, man, I know my struggles in the past. I'd be right for the picking. You know what I mean? I'm not ready yet to face that kind of ministry because I run the risk of being what they expect me to be and breaking and.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like a chocolate dipped strawberry, right? I mean, you have to get a full immersion in the Holy Spirit before you're ready, and it's going to take multiple dippings. And so, because otherwise you will. I mean, everybody's susceptible. I mean, these aren't ugly people. They're not, like, we see, you could go on YouTube and see drug addicted prostitutes, right? Like, that'll do anything for money. Well, they you can tell they've been turned out a long time. And these, I mean, I'll give you an example. If Hanel were here, she would tell you there's one girl that we started with, Talia, who's absolutely beautiful. Well, she's 23, right? Well, then I come back one day and she brought her 19-year-old cousin, and they live next to each other. This girl could easily compete on the world stage. She's just beautiful, right? But she's a 19-year-old kid who had a broken phone, and the only way she could get a new phone was to go work at the bar because she has no other marketable skills. And everybody here wants to be in the pageants. So, and there's no shortage of beautiful people. The point is that you begin to see people for who they are as people, and not for the one thing that they're selling. You know what I mean? But you have to be immersed. And if you're not, then you are susceptible. And that's why you have to be accountable to other people as well. And that's the other thing. I mean, you can be as transparent as you want to be, but if you're doing it on your own, outside of some real accountability, and that's just having people in your life that'll ask you hard questions and challenge your decisions at times. If you don't do that, then transparency is nonsense. I mean, it's all fluff, right? You just make it up anyway, and so because you'll lie to yourself easily. But anyway, the point is, yeah, it's quite difficult, and you have to be honest about it. I mean, I'm a red-blooded male, so I see, when I see beautiful people, they're beautiful. That doesn't change. It's just that, thankfully, I remind myself of what's at stake, right? I mean, I could trade all of this for an hour, but whose eternity potentially is being exchanged for an hour of my pleasure, right? I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow unless you're very brazen. and I'm just not that guy. So that's kind of what I tell myself. And then, and then I see them as the broken, hurt people who've never been, rarely have they been loved for who they are, just what they do.
Right. And then, I mean, you and I have talked about this before you even, moved to the Philippines, but man, how hard is it to feel that same love for the guy that's turning her out?
Yeah, it's funny, man. Daniel, who's the owner of the bar, this is so strange. Like I'll never forget the first day I walked in. I mean, it was just still during COVID, and the lockdowns were still in place marginally, right? So it wasn't full lockdown. So they would close at like you'd have to leave at 10 o'clock or something like that. Now they're open till 3 a.m. So they're might as well just stay there all day. But I just remember walking in and I'm like I'm already mad at any guy that's in there, and because they're touching and grabbing, and like the first time I walked in, I tell the story all the time. This a guy from China. I say Chinese guy, and people are like, yeah, right. No, he was literally from China. Because it's right down the road here. It's like literally close. So he, oh my gosh, man, he was trying to show off to me or something like that. And like this is how I got to know that one girl that I was telling you about that kept trying so hard. Um, but he grabbed her, man, and slapped her on the butt. And like then he looked at me like, gives me the thumbs up, and I looked at him. I was like, what if I did that to you? You know what I mean? I was like, would you like that? And I was just like, he could tell I was not pleased, right? I was unhappy. So he just like, whatever, and turned away. Her face fell. So I wanted to kill him initially. So then I had to repent over that. But then like the next time I went in, I said, who owns this place anyway? And they all pointed to this tall, skinny guy, right? This Canadian guy. And so I'm like, I hate this guy. You know what I mean? He's generally a super nice person. Um, he wants to be friends with me so bad. So man, every time I see him, he's like, "Oh, Kelly, it's so good to see you." Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I finally said to him one time, I said, "You realize that we're like what was that, the Bugs Bunny, where the dog and the fox or whatever, like they're are always trying to, but they're friends outside of the job, right?
Right.
Like the guard dog that's guarding the chickens or the sheep or whatever, and then the coyote or the whatever is trying to get him. But like George and whatever, they're friends. I was like, man, we're on opposite sides of this battle here, and he's like, and then finally he just starts breaking down. He's like, it's just not really what I want to do. This is not what I wanted to do, but it's like the only way to survive here, and blah, 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 blah. So, but we've forged a relationship. And I started seeing him as just another person who, he, why would I expect him to know any better? I mean, why do we expect anybody to think as we do when they don't have the same spirit within them that would cause them to think that way? So if you're thinking like I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to survive and thrive, well, that's anathema to the Christian thought process. It's just not that way. We're the opposite. Come and die. That's two
Right.
separate, diametrically opposed thought processes. So I mean, I once I just allowed that thought to go in my head, then I started to decide to make friends with him, because then I thought, I was like, well, what if the Holy Spirit is actually sent me for this guy, not these girls, because this guy can make a whole lot more difference quickly.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at now.
So not only in your ministry today, but going back, over your, I don't know, let's say last 10 years, is it possible? I know it's possible, but is it possible to be too real, too transparent?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you get up on stage or whatever and you gush about everything, like that's just inappropriate in any situation. It's never appropriate to just blah, verbally puke all everything you think and everything you do. Like that's just ridiculous. You should do that before the Lord, right? I mean, that's the kind of intimate conversation you can have with the Lord. Why? Because he's safe. Because he genuinely um, wants to foment healing and growth. Not We can't say that about everybody. And so, you know, some people would say, well, the Lord's going to protect me. Well, I mean, yeah, he starts off protecting you by giving you a little wisdom,
Right.
and some common sense. And so, yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to get up and say everything that you're thinking, or everything that you're going through, or all your struggles. I do think it's appropriate over a trust built relationship to have a few people in your life that you can do that with and be able to have those times with. But even then, there's certain things that I just think that you, well, like if you're married, you save certain things for your spouse. I mean, I learned that the hard way in my failed marriage. That I'll give you an example, and were my ex-wife listening to this, she would attest to this. It took me quite a while to figure out what I did wrong here, but what I I was in the car business, right, for quite a while, and the car business can be quite vindictive. And so when you leave a place to go get a better job, well, they take it quite personally at times. And so I had done that. I went and got a great job, whatever. Well, I decided to leave that place. My old company called me back and said, now that you have even more experience, we want to bring you in and we're going to give you this great package. I was like, oh, it's so awesome. So I cut ties with my current place. I went back there. 2 weeks later, they fired me. No reason. And then I found out later that they'd just been waiting, like to get me back, because I hurt their feelings so bad by leaving. And they let me go 2 weeks later. I didn't have anything set up. I didn't have any irons in the fire. I didn't know what to do. So there I am. I don't even have a car at this point because I was driving a dealer car. You know what I mean? So I was like, what am I going to do? Well, the first call that I made was to my mom and dad, right? Because my dad is that guy that I could call and say, Dad, here's what happened. And oh my, well, she got terribly offended. I mean, she's like, I'm supposed to be your first call. And I was like, what could you do? Like,
Right.
I was mad. I'm like, well, you can't do anything. You can't fix this. And I'm embarrassed. And I'm this, and I need somebody who can actually give me good advice. Well, I was saying terrible things, not aimed particularly that way, but I didn't realize that I had breached that thing. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make, as you can tell, is that there's a hierarchy of trust that should be in your life, and you should wisely choose who to trust with certain bits of information. However, that we are still called to be more transparent than the average culture. You know what I mean? And now the big question that you would ask is, well, what's the line? And
Right.
I think that line is one that you and the Holy Spirit and your family and your wife and your trusted few can help you draw. And if you're smart and if you have some personal wisdom, you will allow other people to help draw that circle around you. Because invariably, we're going to draw much too big a circle because we think that's what Jesus would do. Like, we're going to draw this big giant circle. Everybody's welcome in our inner circle. Man, no, he didn't do that either.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think we need to and with wisdom and prompting of the Holy Spirit, have people around us that help us to draw that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself doing that on the few times that I've been able to, get up and give messages about Celebrate Recovery, which includes my past and my own recovery. And there's stuff I've had to consider that my two younger children don't even know about my past at this point.
Right.
Not that I'm ashamed of it, but they're just not old enough to understand. And for two, I've had to clear it with my wife. Hey, do you mind if I say XYZ from the stage? Because at some point you're involved in this. So
Yeah. And it's a reflection on them anyway. Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, from hearing stuff from the past, you struggled with the same thing in your previous marriage of just blurting stuff out on stage, not,
I did that too. That was another thing that came up in the divorce proceedings. I mean, like, there's nothing good about a divorce except it is a time machine through every failure you've ever had and didn't even know it sometimes. Yeah. And so, but I remember the moment. I'll never forget it. I got up on stage and I even said it from the stage. I was like, I've never even told my wife this. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And then Gay afterwards, she's like, that was a mistake. And I was like, I don't care, because I'm the kind of guy. It's like, oh, I screwed up. Well, let me put my head down and run faster. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna let me run into it. That's stupid. That was a stupid thing, man. And it wasn't even like a big deal. It was just something quite personal to me. It didn't involve. This was back when I was a kid, so it didn't involve anybody and except my parents, really, and my grandparents who were deceased at that time. But it was a story from when I was like 4 or 5 years old, but it was so intimate. Um, and and the fact that I never shared it, and I shared it with strangers first. It was just kind of like, that's just foolish. But I mean, I'd love to say that I never got the blessing of wisdom that Solomon got. Like, I didn't get it in one swoop. I earned it the hard way. I mean, I've got a lot of flesh that's stuck to a lot of freaking hot grates on the oven. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I can see, yeah, this part's hot, but what about this one over here? I mean, I've lost many a fingertip, and that's just the story of my life, really.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of laughed. There was a meme that went around that somebody shared a couple weeks ago, and this woman, it, it says, oh, my husband and I got separated on a plane. I won't go to the bathroom because I don't want to ask the person next to me to get up. But my husband's sharing beef jerky with complete strangers 3 rows forward and has been invited to their wedding. Like, that perfectly describes my wife and I as well. She's like, oh, so somebody like me who's drawn to transparency thinks that oh, well, that's good for everybody. Let me just blurt everything from the stage. But that wisdom issue, like you said, is that there's a time and place and a circle of people that's safe to do that in.
Well, and the other thing, Joe, is that it's also, you have to be very careful because we know that people are drawn to that sort of brutal honesty, and like people think it's like an enlightened state that I've reached this point of nirvana that I can just tell you about all the wickedness and terrible things that I've done, and I'm unashamed. People are drawn to that, and we have to be careful that we're not doing that to make ourselves, to deify ourselves in a lot of ways, and make ourselves more Christ apparent.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then that's really the thing. It's like we've got to be careful about that. So I think there's a difference in godly transparency and then just doing it for the show. That's, again, these are all lines and things that you can't really quantify, or they can't necessarily be pinned down and say, well, here's the manual for transparency, because everybody's different. But again, it's no different than, I'm going to go work at a soup kitchen. Well, why are you doing it? Is it because you have a burning passion to serve people, or you want to make yourself feel better? Do you want to be seen? Would you go work at a soup kitchen with a bag over your face, and everything that would know people know who you are obscured, and faithfully serve for 50 years doing that? Or that's it. And so those are just real questions. And again, that's it feels like I'm referencing Gay a lot tonight, but those are the things that she was a powerhouse in, was saying, look, take a second and at least acknowledge the fact that it's possible you're doing this to edify yourself instead of edifying God. And so, I think that that's a worthy thought process. So before you get up and announce something or share something from your testimony, your past, whatever it is God going to be glorified by the end result, or will you be sucked up in the glory whirlwind, with him? Where people are like, man, every time Joe gets up and tells his story, ooh, I get goosebumps, and man, Joe's such a good guy. Like, that's, those would prick me, man, when I would come down off the stage and people would say, man, your message. I'm like, it's not my message. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I love it when you speak. Why? Oh, just, man, you just get so passionate. Like, you bang the pulpit and it just fires me up. I was like, that's just delivery. That's a showmanship. That's irrelevant.
Right.
What from the message stirred your soul? What from the scripture made an impact on you? What scripture references did I use? Right. And so it's like, if people can't say that, then that's usually means that I put on a show instead of, doing what God really called me
Yeah, I
to
mean,
do.
I can remember when I first came to Salem Fields, probably 8-9 years ago now. We were doing these little weekend projects for people in the community that Jason had lined up, and having a plumbing background, I was eager to offer my talents. It's what a good Christian does, right? Is you go help people. So I can remember specifically the family we were doing a new kitchen sink, bathroom floor, and all this stuff for. Well, the family got out of our way, got out of the house that day by going to King's Dominion for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, well, they have money to take 5 people to an amusement park for the day, but they don't have money to pay for and man, quickly the Holy Spirit was like, if you're doing it because you think they deserve it, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, that's true. But it's also fair to say that a good Christian it's being a good Christian. It seems to be one-sided, like where you're always, if you can give it, you should give it. Well, if you have money, then maybe you should pay it. Like that's also being a good Christian, like
Right.
paying somebody their worth. You know what I mean? Now, professional ministers like myself and other people, we're quick to talk about how important the tithe and the offering is because we want to get paid for our, what God's called us to do, right? Because that's how we eat. And I just think it's quite funny that we're okay to bang that drum, but other people, regular people, it's not good. It's like,
Right.
oh, he's a Christian plumber, he should give me a discount. Well, you're a Christian client, you should pay him what he's worth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what, you think that Christianity is one way? I don't think so. Again, you should be receiving all the time. That's being transparent, folks. If you want to hear it, like these are
Right.
the transparencies that people don't like when they're reminded that people manipulate the gospel message to get things from people, make themselves get stuff, and that is a travesty. And in fact, if I'll get off my soapbox quickly here, but I love talking about the commandments, but you know when we talk about don't take the Lord's name in vain, it I firmly believe that doesn't mean saying God, DAMN or whatever. I think I really believe that what it's saying is don't call yourself of the Lord and then act in a way that is unbecoming of that name.
Right.
Don't ever do that. And
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 I
you
and I
know,
think that's
sorry, knowing the original, we always give you a hard time about the original Greek and the original, Aramaic and stuff like that. I've listened to Dennis Prager a couple times, who the commandment actually says, "Do not carry God's name in vain."
right.
And that's what he said in a forum I was watching. Is I don't think it's a sin to say, "Oh my God, what a home run," like
Right.
but it's to carry out acts in the name of the Lord that are not of the Lord.
Yeah, and it's easy to see that when you look at the parables that Jesus talked about with stewardship, somebody acting in the name of the master. What do you do with that power? I mean, and the stewardship from the garden. I mean, so it's quite clear to me. But the point is, like, I think that that's one of the sins that the church is the most guilty of, is that very thing, is using God's name to get things from people and to get them to do things out of guilt, shame, or desire to be a better follower. And I think it's a real travesty. And I think the pastors are probably amongst the worst at doing that. We find a skilled laborer in the church and we expect them to do everything for free. I mean, oh, we're building a wall. Doesn't Johnny's got a masonry business. Johnny, would you come over here and build this wall for free for the love of God and country? Yeah, I guess I will. Why should I? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, why are you going to come over and, then we go do weddings and funerals and we expect them to pay us for that. I just think it's funny. Anyway, neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Hawkins used to have a little skit about that. About, oh, you've got a servant's heart. No, you've got some chairs that need to be stacked. That's why you're
Yeah,
telling me.
that's right.
So, but no, to land the plane here, I mean, kind of, tying into what I do. I mean, every Thursday night we run a Celebrate Recovery ministry. Well, starting back May 19th, and not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think that's that circle of trust where you can come in and sit down at a table with 5 or 6 guys or 5 or 6 girls and man, blurt it all out. And what's funny is, typically we see the guys that, or well, I don't see the females when they go into small groups, but the guys, the guys that are there for the first time, the ones that are, let's say, the most broken, they never want to share first. If we say, who wants to go first, obviously they never want to share first, which is funny because a few weeks in, usually they're prime. They can't wait to share when they get there if they've been 2 or 3 times.
Sure.
But they never want to share first. But what I love seeing is as every other guy shares and it gets to them, the walls are chipped away more and more. Like they didn't plan on sharing until they heard 5 other guys share. And then all of a sudden it's like, crap, I can say that out loud. Like
Yeah.
I can say that I struggled with porn this week. I drank while I was at work. I shouldn't have drove home that day. Like, and it doesn't make it all right. We're not softening my red light analogy of, we run a red light and we look to see if anybody else ran it behind us because it makes us feel better. But the truth of it is that it didn't make you running it any less illegal. You both ran the red light. We don't look at the person behind us and say, oh, well, they did it worse, so now I can feel better.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, but that's the way we live lives, and that is an unredeemed way of living, because again, I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you.
Right.
So we use that mechanism as a survival mechanism, and it's convoluted because it's just like, well, I'm not as bad as that person. But again, that's that we that Mendoza line that we talk about, or what level, that's what's truly fascinating anthropologically to me, is how what crazy thought process made this your line, made this person
Right.
your fall below. Like, as long as I'm not worse than Hitler, I'm okay. Like,
Right.
what do you choose? We never choose Mother Teresa. We never choose Jesus. We never choose a sovereign and holy God. We choose some jerk that is easy to rise above. And so, like, that's, if you're that type of person, I mean, the first thing, if you have any logic in you at all, you should look at this and say, yeah, that's stupid. Like, how could I possibly, like, I mean, why would I choose this person or that person? It's so random because it happens all the time.
Right.
It's like, pick a higher target. And that's why Jesus made everybody so mad, in Matthew 5, because he's like, well, you heard it said that this is one way, but I'm telling you, it's even worse than this. He's like, man, why are you raising the bar on us? It's already hard. Being a good Jew and a God-fearing Jew is already hard. Like, Jesus comes along and throws down aces. He's like, now what? You know
Right.
what I mean? It's like, it's super hard. Like, come on, Lord, give me a break.
Well, and then we turn around and soften all that by, well, he didn't really mean gouge out your other eye. He meant, that's just what he meant. That's just hyperbole, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I tell you what, though, it would, if I had gouged out an eye a few times, it would have saved me from a lot of trouble
right.
in my life. I can tell you, I mean, if I'd cut off a few fingers, I probably would have, man. I know it's super harsh and crazy, but if you think about it, it's like, yeah, it may sound foolish, but I tell you what, if there's, I don't know, if there was a bunch of one-eyed guys walking around, I think the world would probably be a safer place. You know what I mean?
Right.
I really do, because we are some sight hounds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I watch it all the time. Like, Joe, we talked about you coming here for a mission trip and stuff like that, and I can't wait for you to do that someday. But one of the first things that I'll do is, with anybody, is I will take you to the mall, and we will sit outside of this one particular coffee shop where foreigners like to go, and watch the foreigners watch the girls walk by. Like, it's even creepy to me. Like, it makes my skin crawl. And I just think, I'm like, man, this Jesus knew, like, we are so activated by sight. He's like, man, I'm telling you what, you'd have a much more peaceful life with less vision. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so I hate to say it, but sometimes I do envy some blind people. But anyway, it's a whole nother
Well,
story.
cool. How can people find you? How can we get a hold of Reach PH? How can people donate to Reach PH if they so choose? I mean, you're talking about women who, I mean, just to circle back, selling their bodies for $6 a day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you wanted to find me physically, I'm the largest white person anywhere around here. So just stand outside and you'll see me. Like, good God, what is that Yeti walking by? That's me. So reach.ph is the website. And at the end of the day, we need help. I'll give you a shameless plug for money. Everything we do costs money. The house that we maintain, the education that we're paying for, we buy computers for the girls, we buy clothing, we feed them, we clothe them, we do everything so that they don't have to do that. And trust me, it's not just one person's life, it's generational changes that are being made. But we need financial support, we need prayer support, obviously we need people at some point to come out here and work with us. I mean, we need all that stuff. But you just go to Reach PH, find out a little bit more about what we do. Check us out on Facebook, Reach Philippines. Um, and that's, man, if you follow Joe, Joe follows Reach and follows me, you can find us that way. You can go to the SFCC Global on the Salem Fields website, SFCC or salemfields.com, excuse me, and /global. And we are also there because we're partnered with SFCC, amongst other churches and things. So, but I mean, truth be told, man, we just need help. I'm coming back, and I'll be home next week. Actually, I'm coming to the U.S. next week, and I look forward to seeing you, Joe, obviously in person. Man, praying for either sushi or steak from you. So
Right.
I'm still I'm just kidding. That's just something that we used to do together, and I just love it. But
We'll have to go somewhere you can get blue rare.
man, well, yeah, I just slap it down on a piece of hot concrete for a second. You know what I mean? But my dad would say just walk a cow through a warm room. So, but yeah, I'm coming back to raise money partially, and visit, tell some stories and stuff. But I've got some incredible stories to tell. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, just the beginning. But reach.ph if you want to check it out.
Cool. And if you can make that flight time any shorter than 22 hours, I'd be happy to come visit you sooner than later.
Man, boo hoo. My flight home is 34 hours this time.
Oof.
So 22 hours is gold
I bet.
coming. Man, I was like, puh. But the good news is I have a big layover in Qatar, Doha, Qatar, and it's a really cool airport. So like I have a 9-hour layover, but it's like they have the most beautiful lounge, and they have these great reclining seats and really killer food. So I'm like, I'm fine. I'm okay.
Right. Yeah. So
I don't care. And plus, I'm traveling by myself. So unfortunately, Hanel can't come. She's going home. I couldn't get a visa to bring her visitor's visa to bring her to the country yet. So, ugh.
well, cool, man. We're praying for you. I appreciate the time, and look
Thanks,
forward
man.
to seeing you in a week or two.
Man, you got it. Look forward to it too. Praying for you guys. And let me just say one more thing. Um, I used to not be the biggest fan of CR, Celebrate Recovery, because I felt like Celebrate Recovery was like doing everything the church was supposed to do. And so instead of being mad at Celebrate Recovery, I focused my madness at the church, because
Right.
we are failing miserably to do what parachurch organizations have to come in and do, and that's a shame. So shame on us. We could do better. If you're not a believer, you can come to Celebrate Recovery, and the first thing they do is not going to convert you. But I've sat through it, and I've listened to hearts being emptied, and it is cathartic, and it's healthy, and it's good. And the difference in CR and other programs, my friends, if you have any interest, is that you don't walk away just emptied of the guilt and shame. That you're offered something to take the place of it, something healthy, something good. And so, that's just my plug for CR. It's worth checking out. And Joe's a good leader, because he knows what it's like to be a bad person and struggle, and he's transparent about it.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I love you. I miss you,
Love you too,
and
brother.
look forward to seeing you
Thanks.
soon.